don't even know if that phone.
It probably won't go.
It's never recorded more than 2 minutes, so we'll see if it.
Maybe
I'll give it a little more time.
Do you want me to record? Just go.
You can record right when you think it's like really like action packed up here. Yeah. If it's boring, don't record. Like if someone's falling asleep, don't span to them.
Yeah.
I never have this much room. I got everything set up. I'm usually in this little podium standing there, so this is nice.
Right?
Probably wait like another few minutes just to see
I like it. Now you guys are really on all
let's see if there's anyone else
I haven't had it.
that you all maybe seen. This 3-year-old golden retriever is named Earl. He's a mental health service animal for me. So today I'm going to talk briefly. I'm going to share my story about how I got to the point where I'm at now and how I got involved working with dogs, as well as give some background definitional differences between service animals, therapy dogs, emotional support animals, give you some, show you a video showing some tasks that service animals can do for people. It's all going to be centered around people with psychiatric challenges, so while there are many facets for service animals, that's the one obviously that I'm focused in and goes along with the whole 3-day week here. So so I maybe 18 years ago I began a long, very difficult journey with severe depression and anxiety. I was heading to college when it hit, but probably throughout life. I mean, as many of us kind of later look back, it was surfacing through childhood, anxiety, worry. Got to college and it became incapacitating depression where I had to take many breaks from school and get treatment. And this was back in 98, 99. So things weren't as advanced as they are now. I mean, it might be several years later, but the treatment protocols have advanced a lot and the types of therapy that are offered. So for me, I went through probably my episodes of depression lasted anywhere from a year to 2 years straight, with no relief in between, where I was bedridden with severe depression. I couldn't function. I couldn't be around people. I couldn't. I couldn't do anything. Didn't care for myself. I didn't eat. For some of us, we eat too much. For some, we don't eat at all. It's just how each person the illness manifests in their body. So I would go to doctor after doctor, psychopharmacologists, psychiatrists, social workers, psychologists for therapy, and nothing was working, and my condition was rapidly deteriorating. I ended up probably trying over 70 different combinations of psychiatric drugs at 70, which is maybe 32 different types. So I mean, anyone that's been taking medications, you realize that's a whole difficulty in itself. Medicine doesn't work. You have side effects, and you're worse than your actual illness. So I certainly exhausted my options as far as I saw it with medications. So along the way, I would go to therapists, whether it was cognitive behavioral therapy, traditional. Let's look at your past. Analyze what's going on type of therapy. And I wasn't getting better. And I would see some great doctors, some people that I was lucky enough to get into, researchers really forward in their field, yet still no relief. I even had the opportunity to do alternative treatments, and I call them alternative. I mean, maybe a better word is complementary, but things like yoga, meditation. I went to a healing retreat weekend where they were doing, I saw they do Reiki here, so it was something like Reiki energy healing, but it was even farther out in that world than that. There was Peruvian whistling, which I barely knew where Peru was, so they were doing whistling. I had shamans, people, these two ladies were doing this exercise where they spit on me, which was, I mean, you know, not my favorite thing to do, like, but it was supposed to be cleansing. But needless to say, you know, the spit did not heal me during that moment. So, you know, somewhere along the way, and I can't figure out really where to attribute it to, but someone mentioned, you know, why don't you get a dog? You know, have a companion, someone that will be there with you through these tough times. And you know, I thought, well, that's a great idea. It sounds all well and good, but I can't take care of myself. How am I going to take care of an animal? But in actuality, it ends up, once I got him, and I'll get to that part, you know, taking care of myself is in conjunction with taking care of him. So really it was a huge benefit. So after about 17 years struggle, and you know, in addition, just to mention, you know, the other things I tried, I was lucky enough to try transcranial magnetic stimulation. Some people may have heard of it, TMS, which is extremely expensive. I got a doctor that did it for me in Arizona free of charge. So otherwise it would have been $25,000 that I just didn't have, because as many know, when you're struggling with a severe illness or disability, you know, you're not really at the top of your working and you know, career and bringing in enough money to afford that. So if we don't have family help, if we don't have someone offering a free service, we're kind of stuck with, you know, what we can afford through our insurance and such. So I got Earl, he's from north of Nashville, Tennessee. I got him about 3 years ago. I got him at 2 months old and decided to train him as you can either call it a psychiatric service animal. I like to say, you know, mental health, I think, has a better connotation, better ring to it. So we'll call him a mental health service animal for now. So I got him, and I worked alongside of a trainer who had experience working with people with psychiatric disabilities and training different tasks. And you know, my life changed dramatically. For the first time, you know, in my life, I was able to feel like real. Come here, Earl. Yeah, I knew he would escape. He doesn't like me going anywhere. Yeah. So, you know, for the first time, I felt, you know, a purpose. I'm now caring for this. He was a tiny little puppy at the time. I might be able to find a picture of him. He had a little vest on, and I would start taking him everywhere with me. I would take him to the grocery store. I would take him to the movie theater. We even saw an IMAX, which was a polar bear exhibit, which probably not the best thing to take a puppy to, because, you know, there's giant polar bears, and he was more interested in eating the popcorn than someone like jumped. So, you know, there's challenges, and it's a learning experience as you go. But what I like to do now, because I know there's a lot of questions, you know, what can a service animal do and what types of tasks can they provide? I want to touch on that. But first I want to show just a short video of if it works.
Now it did that.
Yeah, I know, it's a new iPhone that doesn't seem to work. So
Well, you got a little bit.
this is, and I'm not sure if we'll be able to hear it, but it's not as important to hear it, it's just to watch. This is, I'm assuming this is the mother of someone who's in bed right now in the room right there. And this is the person who's sleeping, their service animal. So it's just a short minute video, if it has sound. I don't know how to get this off. So Janelle is in the bed, sleeping.
Just hit allow.
So, you know, what a better way to wake up than have a dog. It doesn't have to be a golden, but I'm partial, so the dog is trained to open the blinds. So these are the first two things: licking her face, opening the blinds, are both tasks. Now she's not up yet, so go ahead and get the covers off. And she's now talking to her daughter, I assume. And, the dog was going to go back and from there was going to offer more kisses if needed. But, so really what we're seeing there is we're seeing several tasks. We saw, the dog pushing the door open. I mean, luckily, I think Ellie is the person's name who was in bed. Her mom's there to kind of help and, kind of direct the dog. But maybe in a lot of situations that dog is trained enough to do that on their own. So in that video, we saw,
It's not.
Is it still playing?
Yeah.
We're just going to turn the volume off. So in that situation, the dog's able to try first licking her face to get her up. Second, opening the blinds, letting some natural sunlight in. Dogs can be trained to turn lights on and off, pulling the covers off, and I think eventually she starts to wake up at that point. But people need this. A lot of people are on a lot of medication, especially at night for sleep. And if you've taken medication that is sedating, it's very difficult to wake up. And for some, that can be a danger. They can miss work, they can miss their appointments. So it's really important to have that extra help that the animal provides. So just some other tasks that animals can help for mental health conditions are they can bring medicines. They're trained to, you keep your medicine in a little bag that has a handle where the dog can grab it and put it in its mouth. They can bring medications to someone to remind them of taking their medicine. Sometimes we're taking 3-4 medicines in a day. That's a lot to remember. Oh, it's 11:42. I'm supposed to take this. I mean, for people that are high functioning, that would be hard to remember. So certainly when you're dealing with your own struggles. For a lot of vets, you'll see coming back with PTSD, they're starting to work with dogs more and have service animals. You'll see animals that will provide a buffer. So, with PTSD, it's important to know, who's behind you. You're always looking, and I wasn't in the war, but I've talked to a lot of people, and, I know that you're very hyper vigilant. You're looking behind you to see, who's there, are you safe? So the dog, its purpose is to create that buffer and let someone know, okay, there's someone behind you. They nudge the person, and that gives them an extra sense of security, which is very important because without that security, they're going around in what would feel, I assume, like a constant panic attack of adrenaline and, like you're pretty much in wartime scenario, but you might just be in a Walmart. So they can interrupt obsessive behaviors. So some people are cutters, where it's self-harm. So where they're taking a knife or taking, whatever it is and hurting themselves to try to relieve the pain. So an animal sees that and they see them cutting at themselves and they will interrupt that behavior by nudging their hand. And it kind of brings a person back to say, okay, this is not appropriate behavior. They can perform room searches. So another thing that I found with vets is, when you go home to a dark apartment, dark house, or anywhere, let's say they were walking in here and there's a dark room, they'll send the dog in first, make sure everything's safe, and the dog gives a signal, comes back and gives a signal. So that's very comforting because without that, they're having to go into that very scary situation without any comfort. There's even dogs. There's emergency phones, which I think are really cool. It looks like an old type of telephone with a button that the dog will step on and call whoever it's programmed to call. A lot of times it can be 911. It will call. If a family member sees this number coming in, they'll know, okay, there's an emergency. The dog's alerted us. We need to get over there immediately. So, they can also. Since I'm not speaking about other types of service animals, I'll just briefly mention, there's diabetes alert dogs that can sense, they can smell when your blood sugar's low, as well as a similar type of training for a seizure alert dog. So when if you're about to have a seizure, you put off a different smell, the dog knows that smell and either will go get seizure medication in an assigned area, or they'll actually will come stand next to the person, so if they were to fall over from the seizure, they'll brace their fall. So those are just, some other types. Of course, we've seen Guiding Eyes. Well, that's an organization near Guiding Eyes for the Blind. They work with people that can't see and work with guide dogs. And
Autism. I have a nephew that his kids are autistic, and they train the dog to be with their kids anytime, even in the hospital.
Yeah, so there's children with autism or on the autism spectrum that work with animals. So there's a number of, I'll get your...
Okay. No, go ahead. I'll wait.
Yeah, and I'll leave room. There'll be plenty of time for questions. If there's if you have a question that's specific to what I'm talking about, feel free to raise your hand. I'm not that person that's going to be like, oh no, you asked a question before the set time, because I was always interrupted.
Actually, I was going to say that I've seen service dogs on planes, and they're allowed to have their animals actually ride with them as a regular person with the plane ticket.
Yeah,
and I was like, and I specify that because I work at the airport, and I have seen service animals, with their, with the person, and
you work at the so you're probably seeing service animals, and you're probably also seeing emotional support animals
Correct.
As well, which I'll touch on and kind of give you the difference between the two. But he's probably flown 10 times with me. We go and we sit in the bulkhead area.
Right.
He's a big dog, so it's those first seats on either side of the plane that have the extra leg room.
Right.
And
do you get the first class, or do you get the business?
Well, I take Southwest, so we're all one class there.
Southwest.
But I wouldn't be getting him in first class, because that means I would have to buy a first class seat. We're just not there yet. Maybe one day, but
maybe if I go to Delta, maybe I'll just look you up and get you a ticket for nothing.
I'll certainly, I would love to. Don't leave here. I'm going to take you up on that. I got to get your information. But
But seriously, I'm sorry. No, because I can get you on any class. I can get you on first class, second class, business, coach.
Wow.
It's all in one price. And
Well, this is a huge benefit. I didn't just want to have you here, but now I'm already feeling like I'm relaxing in first class here. There's tons of applications for a mental health service animal. There are certain challenges and hurdles, and I'll go back to kind of what I was doing. So when I got him and I'm working with the trainer, it became every day is a new day, especially taking a puppy around and doing what's called public access, going places that animals aren't allowed. We would go into some places like, let's say, a Safeway or a grocery store. They're trained to understand, okay, this is a service animal, we're not going to bother him. Then you go to the local, I live in Brooklyn now, you go to a local corner store that's been operating as a corner store for 50 years. They're set in their ways. They're not going to have anything about it. They don't want the dog there, they don't care, they don't ADA who, it doesn't matter. There are a lot of barriers. So just, the fact is, I think a lot of people feel like, oh, that would be great, love to take my dog places, but anyone that's a parent, I'm not a parent, but any parents out there, it's not as easy as it looks. It's like taking your 2-year-old, 1-year-old child everywhere with you. Sometimes the parents just want to get the babysitter. So, luckily for me, my condition has improved enough to where I don't have to have him with me 24 hours a day. Someone that is blind might not have that luxury because they're not able to see all of a sudden because of the dog. So the dog is their eyes. Whereas someone with a mental health disorder, you go through different periods where you need your dog more so than others. So it's all relatively new. It's a new field, and it's the training of it is new. There are organizations out there that do offer training, but there's a trained dog, but the cost is anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000, 20 to 60, let's say. And let's say you wanted a dog now, most likely you're going to call, and there's going to be a 5 to 10 year wait. And as we know, you can't. 5 to 10 minutes is eternity, so 5 to 10 years, you might as well just chalk that up. So
It's a
That's
lot
why
of
I
shelter
decided to
dogs.
there are a lot of shelter dogs.
I know somebody that trains shelter dogs to be therapy dogs to go in hospitals.
Yeah, there's a
work with
lot
the
of, you'll
kids.
see a lot of things even on TV now where they're working with shelters. They're trying to save two lives, the lives of the animals in the shelters and the person that they're helping. So, those organizations do exist, but they are hard to get into and hard to get help. So a lot of people are left, like myself, to train a dog themselves, and it's called an owner-trained dog. And I'm not, Caesar Milan. This was all a learning process, and everywhere I go, whether it was when we moved to New York City a year and a half ago and going on the subway for the first time, it's loud down there. People don't even want to be on the subway. Dogs certainly don't want to be there. So it's all taking things in strides, learning, being patient with yourself and with the animal. So, so I would say, other. Well, I can get back to challenges. I want to touch on some other. Definitions. Let's talk about. So, a therapy animal. A lot of people say, "Oh, I want a therapy animal for my medical condition." Well, a therapy animal is an animal that's working for other people. So when you see animals go visit hospitals, nursing homes, schools, and they go visit and do an activity, or they'll visit a children's cancer ward at a hospital, those dogs are providing therapy for other people. So I went over a service animal. It's for someone. They're a task trained. I'm just going to read. I like to read definitionally when you're talking about the ADA because it's very important to get wording down. So it says, for a service animal under the ADA, a service animal is defined as a dog that has been individually trained to work or perform tasks for an individual with a disability. The task performed by the dog must be directly related to the person's disability. So I showed you those tasks, showed you a video of some tasks. Those are, that is the concrete definition. And with the ADA's, establishment and blessing, these animals are allowed to travel to anywhere that the public is allowed to go. So, they can go into food establishments, they can go into hotels. Hotels can't charge extra, cleaning fees or this or that. They can't put you in a certain area where they're not supposed to. So they do have protection. So you saw the task train. So now we'll transition into an emotional support animal, which is really, I think every animal provides emotional support. Whether or not we're, at the farthest end of the spectrum of sickness to the most high-performing person that seems like there's nothing going on with them, that animal, provides this, really great emotional support. It helps with relieve stress. It helps just a number of things. So, and I think the latest statistic I read was something about 68% of U.S. households have a pet. So I would say that, in the U.S., that's several hundred million people have a pet. So we all have a pet for some reason. And, I'll go over the benefits of pet ownership. But to get back to an emotional support animal, I don't have the ADA's, here, the ADA defines it as, it says, a term emotional support animal is used to describe animals that provide comfort just by being with a person. Because they are not, that's a big thing, not task trained to perform a specific job, they do not qualify as service animals. So, for instance, can you take an emotional support animal into a grocery store with you? The answer is no. They're not a service animal. But where emotional support animals, are very beneficial, are they're protected by the Fair Housing Act. So that's a federal act that says, if a doctor feels that you need an animal for a disability to help you with your disability, even though it's not task trained, for emotional support, they'll write a letter, and you're able to keep and house that animal within any, pretty much any public house, any public and most private housing. So, New York City, everywhere you go, do you have an animal? No, I'm sorry, we won't rent to you. We won't rent to you. Well, this helps people have that benefit of having an emotional support animal and not have to worry about the fact, can they get kicked out? Are they going to get fined? The other area where you're working is the Air Carrier Act, which governs all flights. So now people are bringing emotional support animals on planes. They do have to, an airline attendant could ask you, or usually the person when you're checking in and ticketing will can ask you, can I see, this doctor's note? They're allowed to see that. You have to disclose this animal is for this disability. That's different from a service animal where there is no note, where, so you do have to give up something to have an emotional support animal, but at the same time, you do get something. You get to travel with your animal, and it doesn't have to be a dog. Service animals are only dogs and now miniature horses, which are pretty big, but they help people with mobility problems and such. But an emotional support animal, I've read some things recently on the news where people have had anything from a pot-bellied pig to a snake to, you name it. There's a chinchilla. Whatever your pleasure is, whatever animal you connect with can be your emotional support animal. So that I think that's really when a lot of people say I want a service animal, they realize after either I talk to them or after I speak, they realize, okay, maybe I don't want a service animal, maybe I just want an emotional support animal so I can keep it in my apartment or and such. You guys had a question on the air?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because anytime I always call my mother because she has metal in her, and I always tell her to bring doctor's notes, and that way they don't, question why, the metal detectors are going off. But I'm not saying with the dog, it's the same thing and the same principle. Bring a doctor's note. I always tell people, bring doctor's notes, show me what you got. Either the dog or, what have you. Just bring a doctor's note, they won't say nothing to you.
Well, that's true, but
that's even if you like to fly, right? So do you always?
I have to fly sometimes.
I'm just saying, even if you have some kind of documentation saying, hey, listen, I got this dog. This is the documentation for it.
Well, that's a good.
Like what you're saying, always bring documentation with you regardless.
So, and that's true for an emotional support animal, but I want to reiterate also this fact that if someone has a service animal, there's only 2 questions that can be asked of them. It's not show me your paperwork, because there is no paperwork, and if you have paperwork, that is something that is not looked at by the ADA as needed. So the 2 questions people can ask, like let's say you're an owner of a business, let's say someone out here has a restaurant, they can say, is that a service animal? I would answer yes. Then that can prompt them for the next question, which is what work or task has a service animal been trained to provide? Now that doesn't mean I have to go tell them all about what I share with you in the beginning about because they're not my doctor. So what I can tell them is this animal provides work directly related to a medical condition I have, and that's it. And that's one of the best answers. And I got that answer through talking to people, and because I used to just say, and I would get upset, but people are really trying to learn, and they're trying to realize, what are we allowed to do, what are we not. They can't say, can I see a certificate that shows that this dog is trained? They can't ask you to perform a task, like go have him turn on the lights right now. None of that is required. So with an emotional support animal, they do want to see paperwork. Yeah.
Could you please reiterate for me the law that protects emotional support animals in housing?
I believe it's a Fair Housing Act. I think it's like 1990. If you just Google Fair Housing Act and emotional support animal, some states have more protection, more things that you're allowed to do with your emotional support animal than others. So it's really all state specific. So you've got to, I don't like to give legal advice, that whole thing. I'm not a lawyer and this, liability. You need a doctor, so you'd want to work with most likely either your psychiatrist or your therapist on, is this something that you need to help mitigate, help relieve a disability you have related to your emotional well-being.
I don't know if this is really for him or you. When you bring your emotional animal on a plane, where are they put? Can they be by you, or do they have
Yes.
to go underneath?
Yes, they could go, they could be by you.
You have to pay
Like, you know, you pay for the dog, you pay for yourself, but you're just using that as another person.
My
So-
understanding is that there is no fee for an emotional support animal, but you're seeing all types of animals, because you're also seeing, like my girlfriend travels with her cat and we were
Right.
gone for a while. You do have to pay for an animal that's
Well,
not an emotional support animal, that's a certain size, but
because like, you know, most of the time, like, cargo, because cargo passenger is like, you know, two different things, but usually what they do is they bring some kind of documentation for the animal to go onto the plane. So you kind of have some kind of documentation to bring with you saying, okay, this is what I want to do. But you have to pay an X amount of money. So you can have it in the kennel and they put it on the plane for you. So it's like you have to have like
the best way is just to check, check directly with the airline.
Well,
They're very...
it's not that simple, because sometimes they come in with documents to tell them, hey, listen, this is what we got, live animal. And then they have to go and check it off, and then they have to, like, you know, say, okay, there's a service fee. Because I've seen this a lot too.
Yeah, there's a lot of different scenarios. So what we're saying is there's service dogs, there's emotional support dogs, there's just your pet that you're paying for. So whatever you're dealing, like whatever your specific situation is still worth calling customer service, even asking for a supervisor to get clarity around that. You're definitely going to be questioned. They always question
Well,
you.
there's always different steps for that, because even that you could call, you could talk to a supervisor, you could talk to the agent. They could, like, you know, help you either which way, saying, hey, listen, I got a service dog. Like, you know.
I don't want to spend too much time on the actual like Air Carrier Act, but that's a good one to give you a kind of a good rundown. But I kind of want to get back to now talking about what led me into you know, the purpose behind being here today. What led me into the work doing what's called animal assisted therapy. So when I was going around with Earl, I mean, he still attracts a lot of attention, but as a golden retriever, any puppy really in general, they're like, you know, everyone's stopping and talking and can I pet the dog? And that was good for me because it would get me out of my head or any cyclical thinking. I mean, if anyone's out there as a worrier like me, you get caught in this worry and it's like you can't do anything to stop you. Try breathing, meditate, standing on one leg and holding milk in your hand or whatever it is. And, you know, it won't stop. So the distraction by people interacting with me would help me then kind of come back to the present and get out of that. So that was really helpful. But what got me into the therapy work is that people would come up and share with me their own struggles. You know, at first I started saying I was an animal trainer. I wasn't open yet with my illness. Then I started sharing, you know, he's helped me with severe depression and anxiety. And you'd be amazed, it's 1 in 5 people in the U.S. have a diagnosis, a mental health diagnosis. So, you know,